Good morning, ceramic friends. We are going to talk about texture on our tripod. As you can see, this is the one that I had in progress a while back, but as I was explaining yesterday, when we go to add texture, it's important that we are going to support that texture going through. Some of the textures I chose a dragonfly stamp. There's plenty of textures in the drawers to try, but again, when you go to put your thing on, you have to have your hands on the inside because your clay is still at that leather hard kind of sensitive stage, and you're pressing from the outside in, and these squares are going to give you kind of the texture, but it's also going to leave the box print on them. So if you're okay with that, then that's a good choice. If you're not okay, then you'll want to do some work after the fact, but it's actually very easy. Just so you know, some of these bowls they're turning more into bowls versus mugs, so if you are not putting a handle on, that is okay. I understand some of them are actually turning out to be super cute salsa bowls, so it won't get too bent out of shape, but I do want to see some kind of texture in and around your tripod. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside for the moment, and then we're going to talk about handles. I have my mug that I made the other day, have some cleanup to do on it, but I'm going to just talk about where I'm going to be placing my handle. It's just going to be a traditional handle. You can see that I have 3 handles that I kind of shaped. The other day when I was doing this, you can see that parts of them are turning bone dry. So obviously I'm not going to be using these handles because you cannot add bone dry to leather hard. It's just not going to be compatible. But this handle is actually still good. It's flexible enough that I'll be able to add it. I just need to clean it up, obviously, before I add it on. But it'll be sufficient for this. So we're going to get rid of these 2 handles because I'm going to be recycling those. But again, as you see, I'm looking for that either half of a heart or half of that question mark kind of look to it. And that's going to provide me with 3 fingers that I can go ahead and attach. It's not going over my lip, which we've talked about extensively. By the time it shrinks, I'll only be able to put 2 fingers in, but that's good for whomever is going to be using it. I have bigger hands than most people. So I'm going to put that aside. These 2, again, you can see that they're bone dry on the ends, so they're not going to be workable, but you just want to make sure that you are taking care of these edges. Like, this is just not good. All this cracking is going to be problematic. So what I'm going to do is, after I get it attached, actually before I attach it, I'm going to do some remedy, and then after I attach it, I'm going to be painting the whole thing in slip, just a nice coat of slip inside and outside, and that's going to be a nice finishing touch so that I have an even surface. And then we'll talk about the panels that are going to go on these pieces as well. So I'll put these aside, and with this crack attack, just taking slip and addressing it. And usually slip does the trick pretty well. And I'm just holding it over my fingers as if I were gripping it, just so that it's supported while I'm doing this. And this is going to add moisture to the handle, so it will get a bit delicate. So I'll have to be wary of that as I'm going. And of course, we want to round off any sharp edges that we have. Just round them off like we've been doing with the edge of our thumb or with a rib, just so they're nice and soft, so that we don't have anybody cutting themselves or whatnot. So I'm just continuing to see what I can do about that. I'm going to let the slip soak in, and then I'll get a little bit more. There we go, it's starting to come along. Only thing is with this, I keep looking at it because I want to make sure that it's straight. Sometimes when we do handles, everything looks good this way and we're rounding things out, and then we go to actually attach it and then it's attached at an angle. We definitely don't want that. You want a straight, beautiful line. So just something to keep in mind. This edge is, you can hear where it's leather hard, so I'm taking the tool, because even my finger with that was a little sharp. So I'm just softening that edge. There we go. Blending it in. And this handle is that perfect leather hard, which matches this leather hard. So as we attach, it's perfect conditions for attachment. Just want to make sure it's nice and soft going in. And then I can fiddle with it a little bit more once I have it attached. But at least I have that inside area and the outer edge. Okay. Still want to be gentle with it because I'm not going to do another handle. This is the handle that I'm putting on, so I don't want to do too much manipulation with it, except to get it more smooth, as I'm a little finicky about as that. We've talked about that before. And actually, to get it smoother, we're going to take our rib and it just smooths out the lumpy bumpies that I'm seeing that I don't like. And it's just a personal preference. But it does tend to help craftsmanship make it look nice and ready. Okay, so as I'm going around my mug, I'm looking for spots that I don't particularly like, because that is something that I would be taking and just taking the rib and evening out some of these areas. And again, this compresses the clay, just gives it a nice even surface. If we use the sponge to do this, then we're just drawing the grout out, and the grout is going to be problematic because it feels gritty. And then when we go to glaze, that glaze is going to be gritty as well. And so probably not the best idea to use the sponge, but just keep ribbing it. And there is a softer rib. It's actually the red rib, which is what I like to use for finishing. This is still at a stage where I would use the blue rib, but the red rib is my favorite for finishing, like the very last time I go to rib. So I'm kind of examining, going around, figuring where I'm going to put that. Beautiful handle. And usually I put it in a spot where I want to mask, meaning I want to cover up an area that I'm not terribly fond of, and where I feel like a handle is just going to help it make a little bit more sense. So going around, and I've certainly not done the whole cleanup that I would normally do, but I'm doing it for presentation purposes, for demo purchases. I really just need to get this handle on here. Then we'll talk more about the panels that I'm asking you guys to do on these two. So I think what I'm going to do is I have kind of a flat spot right here, and everything else appears to be pretty well rounded. So I think that's going to be my spot that I want to add this handle. And with the handle, obviously you're going to score and blend. I'm not going to have the curve of the handle going above the rim because, again, if we want to set it upside down, you don't want the handle interrupting that and then having it set down at an angle. So, and by pressing it on the table, it already shows you exactly where you need to score. Score, score, score. Score down here as well. And then I'm gonna kind of just test. It's pretty much where I want it to be. It's a little above, so I'm gonna go a little bit lower, and that's actually the perfect spot right there. So I'm going to just dip a tiny bit of slip, and that's gonna give me that area that I am looking for. Kind of marks it for me. So I know I want to attach there, and I want to attach there as well. Okay. And so now we hopefully find something soft. Obviously it went a little flat because I rested it on the table, so when it's plastic, this happens. And then I also want to make sure that my handle is straight up and out, not at a wonky angle, unless that's intentional. Some people do that intentionally because it's more comfortable for whoever's going to be using it. But usually 90% of the time it would be good. Okay, so I'm making sure that my handle is pretty much straight. Before I do any final, I'm just pressing a little bit. There is a little bit of space there so that when I go to turn this, the handle is not being affected. It's pretty much right on. So I'm going to go ahead and go forward with blending that in. And I want to make it as if the handle was there all along. So I'm going to try to blend just as much as possible. Sometimes when there's that little seam right in there, I'm going to put a little coil in there in just a second. But I'm saving that a little bit closer to the end of the demo, because there will be plenty of cleanup I'm going to have to do on this before this is all said and done. And because I can't really get my rib in here without affecting this handle, I'm gonna just put a little bit of slip on the end of this paintbrush and have that be my helper. I'm really focusing on this top part first, because once I have the top part attached, I know that everything else is going to fall into line. Okay, pretty well attached for right now. And again, I'm still looking for it to be straight up and down and blending it as if it had been there all along. And I'm still going to do some cleanup over here, so not to worry. And right here, right in here, you see that little seam line? Yeah, that's going to disappear in just a second. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and add a little bit more slip. With these, you might want to rest it on a sponge momentarily so it doesn't misshape. Go ahead and score over here too. I know I didn't score on the top, but we'll get it worked out. And again, handle is going a little wonky, so I want to make sure that I can get that. Press down. Sometimes you want to put your finger on the inside to press and support, especially if you're working with leather hard. I didn't bring a knife over, but I did have a needle tool, which I don't see anymore. There it is. Okay, so needle tool is going to help me just kind of hit this. I just want to shave off that extra piece because it's not necessary. And I'm just going to blend it. Some people use this spot and they add like little circles and they put a stamp there. Some people do like a little support where they put a circle up here and then a stamp, and then that actually turns into a support for the thumb. I'm not going to worry about that this time. This is just our basic introduction to a basic mug, so we're not going to get too crazy. And here I'm just kind of smoothing, blending, establishing where I want that to be. And inside here there's extra slip. I'm just going to keep that in there. I would add a little bit of coil, but it's not as necessary as the coil that I'm going to add up here. Okay, so we have our mug. Got our handle. It is really important that you don't mess with the handle until after it's been bisque fired, and even after it's been bisque fired, I would not pick it up by its handle until it's completely glaze fired, until after glaze firing. Just focus on holding it by the body. Leave that handle alone. It is a precious little baby bird just fresh out of the egg going beep, beep, beep. So you have to be super, super gentle with it. And just gonna do something right in there. Then I'm going to take a piece of this stuff and make it a little tiny coil that I'm going to establish right in there, just so I have some insurance. Just so I have insurance to make sure that we are golden. Don't want any issues. And for this little coil, I'm just going to dip it in slip. Literally just like it's swimming in slip for just a minute. And put it right in there because that's exactly where I want that to be. And I'm going to gently try to take off any pieces I don't need, or fill in where I do need, because that's going to have to go down here. So I'm kind of Botoxing, as we've talked about before. It's not a bad thing, just as security, making sure I'm going to have, and I have a nice little point on this tool, so I'm just going to use this tool as kind of push it in there. Do the same thing to the other side. Just take my brush, see how well it's blended. Not completely blended, so I want to make sure I go back in there. Make it look nice and even, as if it were there the whole time. A little bit better. Getting there. Getting there. Okay. All right, so we have handle. Handle's not above my rim. Okay, I have 3 fingers inside. It's going to shrink down to about 2. I can safely put it on the table without the handle being even touched. So we want to make sure that, again, we're not handling the handle until it's completely glazed and finished. If you do, you risk it just snapping off. So we don't want that to happen. Now, the other thing with the panels, I've talked about having 2 to 3 panels. So some people are going to have 1 panel, 2 panel, and then 3 panel. It's going to be kind of, I want you to think of it kind of like a cartoon strip, except for design element. You're just going to have 3 different areas that you're going to have illustration in. Some of you are going to do 2D, like I explained in class, where we have like a little kitty cat drawn into that first panel. Second panel might be the kitty cat half 2D and then half 3D actually protruding coming outside of the window. And then the third panel, or that may be the second panel, and then the third would be a sculptural element to the handle where kitty cat is out and either doing something outside, so you have cat maybe going inside the cup, we don't know. So kitty cat could be doing whatever, but it's drawing the eye around the piece, and that's the whole idea, is that when you're drinking from the mug, then you want to have something going on that's going to draw the eye around the mug as well. And then I've also seen where students have built figurines and they've placed them and attached them. I'm just going to use a snowman example. So they've made a snowman and they've actually sculptural snowman, and they attach it, slip and squirt to the bottom, so it only fills up about half the cup, so that when you actually pour liquid in and then serve the drink, then they don't know that there's a sculptural element in that, and then as they're sipping away and drinking, and the liquid goes down, then they begin to see the sculpture emerge from the water, which is kind of cool. So that's an idea as well. All right, so hope you guys have enjoyed that. Get working on those handles, figure out what you're going to do design-wise, and go from there. We also have the tape that if you're someone who is concerned about the panels you might want to tape off. Let's see if I can do this really quickly. Of course, I can't find the edge of the tape because that is my luck these days. Oh, here we go. So possibly I'll take a piece of tape. And I'm going to use the sponge to let my mug kind of rest on it. And again, I'm not doing anything near that handle. I want that handle to be as protected as possible. So, but I know that I want my panel to go from around here. And it's not going to stick very well, guys, so just so you know. But it does give you an idea of where that panel is going to be at. And you can put the tape on temporarily, kind of measure it, make sure it's going to be the size that you want it to be, and then you can take your needle and kind of draw out that first panel, kind of trace that out, just so you have an idea of where that panel is going to be. And I'll go ahead and do that to this. I'm just going to do it all around, and then that way I can always change it up when I'm ready. Okay, so I have my line there. So I know that anything above this line is going to be just glaze. And anything inside my panel is going to be the design element, whether I carve it, whether I do anything else. And you can continue it around the body underneath if you wish. It's going to be a little bit challenging. That's why I suggest that I kind of tape off, kind of measure out where those panels are going to be at, so that you don't have to worry about anything disrupting the handle, because that really is super important. Once you get that handle on, you really don't want to mess around with too much around it. I'm going to do that. And then I'm gonna go around. So it's gonna leave me about a 2.5, 3-inch space. And you can kind of tell by eyeballing it as well, but you want it to be as close and as even as possible. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but it's a pretty good idea. Right here, I'm just going to take the needle just so I can establish where I'm going to be doing stuff, and I might do something called sgraffito. I briefly discussed it, but it's where you put black underglaze in, and then you scratch through a design, and then the white is going to come through the black, and it's pretty striking actually. I'll show you guys some examples of that, but that will be an option for you as well. Let me just go ahead and get this on here, get this established so I don't have to worry about that. So right now it's just one continuous panel. I can break it up. Over here I can just put a line and break it into two, and I'm going to kind of mirror where my handle is at. Let's see if I can hold that down. Okay, and do the same thing on this. In there, and then I just take the rib, smooth that out, and now I have two panels, one here and one here. And I might, as I'm kind of going through this, I kind of like to continue things through, but I'm going to have a difficult time with kind of getting my needle in here and doing the design work that I want to do, so I may or may not do that. Not quite sure yet. Okay, and then go ahead and smooth this out. Very nice. So we have that. That's the beginning stages of adding that handle and kind of designating where your panels are going to be. All right. If you have any questions, please let me know in class, and I'll be doing a demo. In the next video, we'll show you how to transfer an image from paper, and I'm going to put it onto the piece itself.